So about Auggie from Peacemaker and in general James Gunn's DCU, we're going to talk about it. Warning, spoilers for Peacemaker Season 2 upcoming, as well as discussions surrounding anti-Semitism, racism, bigotry, Nazism, and perhaps images from Peacemaker that include violence and sex and nudity. Maybe you might go into that. A lot of things could happen in this video, so be warned. Here we go. What's going on? As season 2 of Peacemaker was coming to an end, the show revealed that protagonist Chris Smith, aka Peacemaker, escaped to and is now living in an alternate Earth where the Nazis won World War II. The twist wasn't entirely surprising to eagle-eyed viewers, but an oblivious Peacemaker enjoying his utopia gets the message across nonetheless, which is that privilege can obscure one's vision of the horrors around them. Unfortunately, this season as a whole fails to deliver on its premise. The middle of the season was a lot of filler, and then once the big reveal comes around, the show rushes its characters to get back to their reality ASAP. The final episode then pivots away to set up what's next for the DC superhero universe. The focus on Nazi Earth is with its white denizens, and only fleetingly does it show us the anti-fascist group, the Sons of Liberty. It's mentioned that the people of color and other marginalized groups are toiling away at concentration camps off screen. So other than that, we get no insight on what life is like for someone like the alternate version of Adebayo. Instead, the heart of this world is positioned to be Chris's father, Auggie, who was presented as a clear white supremacist villain in the original reality of Season 1. Here in the United States of Nazis, Auggie becomes defensive when he's called a Nazi. He's given a full speech in which he declares that he opposes Nazism and is actually doing the best he can with the power he has. Writer-director / co-CEO of DC Studios, James Gunn, wants to add a wrinkle to the character of Auggie. What if, relatively speaking, he's actually a good guy in this universe? It's worth considering what Gunn is getting at here. We can't be too hard on ourselves for participating in a dystopia we were born into. Take capitalism, for example. Whether it's in our work life or in our consumption, we all are engaged in exploitation in one way or another. A visitor from a stateless, classless, and moneyless society could chastise us for not doing enough. The best we can do is a matter of degree based on the power / privilege we hold. Which is why Auggie's monologue rings hollow. In his world, he's the leader of the most beloved trio of superheroes. He actually has considerably more power than most to stand up against fascism. But he's too comfy in his mansion and glory to do much anything at all to help the marginalized. His words sound more like a cowardly deflection, like the words of an apologist for the status quo and thus a defender of fascism. And Gunn is somewhat aware of this because Auggie's excuses are cut short when a Sons of Liberty member, this world's vigilante, flies in and stabs him to death. Now we can interpret this moment as a wholehearted rejection of Auggie, or it could just be another moment where Gunn undercuts emotion with comedy or violence for effect. It's a bit of Gunn having his cake and eating it too. The scene then becomes more about Chris's emotional arc as he is faced with the death of his father and brother again. He killed both, the latter by accident in his own universe. It's a good scene for Chris's character development, but underwhelming for the promise the season was building up to. Just as things were getting good, the cast escapes back to their Earth, and the show fails to fully engage with the horrors it presents. Taking a look outside the text of the show, it appears Gunn may not be as critical of Auggie as I'd like, saying that he's generally a good guy, while his sons are the bad guys. On the other hand, hearing him speak about Auggie, we get a clear view of his intentions with the character.
I applaud you if your world is perfect and you fight every injustice you ever see. Is that what you do?
He is So much like Harcourt is in our world, who doesn't try to change jack shit, but she does kind of what she can, but that's about it. And that's kind of all the 11th Street kids. We're living within a corrupt system, and so many people in this planet are like that.
Auggie is supposed to be a sort of mirror image of the 11th Street Kid gang, our misfit group of protagonists. They tell themselves they're doing the best they can, whether it's in the Suicide Squad or in Argus, in Peacemaker. And so this whole sequence with Auggie was a pivotal part in their growth that leads them to create the Checkmate organization in the final episode, where they finally are going to do good for the world. And understanding that intent, I think, makes for a better show. I guess I wish it was a little bit more explicit within the narrative, and that the show took more time to explore it, instead of feeling a bit scatterbrained, which is how the season kind of turns out. Auggie isn't a good guy. He's a warning of what it looks like to become complicit in a horrifying system. At best, Auggie is a coward. At worst, he is a charlatan. Wherever he falls, Auggie preaches moderation and is happy to work with fascists for his own gain. I don't know, that sounds kind of like liberals platforming or downplaying bigotry in an attempt to appear balanced and then shush the left for supposedly being too extreme. And so it's disappointing for this season to be unwilling to unpack a Nazi America, because like Autobio says, our world isn't as different as we'd like to believe.
Sad part is, I'm not so sure this Nazi world is as different from our own world as we wish it was.
Damn straight.
Just recently, racist text chats from young Republicans were leaked, which mostly included Republicans in their 30s, by the way, not edgy kids. An American flag with a swastika was seen in a GOP congressional office. Border Patrol used music with anti-Semitic slurs out of context for one of their fashy Instagram videos. A Trump nominee recently says he's on a Nazi streak. A Democrat running for Senate has a Nazi tattoo. It's like all the Nazis are coming out of the woodwork all of a sudden. If it wasn't already clear before Peacemaker aired, it is now. We've got Nazis in the US government, and more keep flocking towards it. And to some extent, this season was on the right track, but it did feel like it was holding itself back. We need scathing critiques of Nazism more than ever now. I mean, an Assassin's Creed game based in the Reconstruction era was just cancelled, because playing as an ex-slave who fights the KKK is apparently too controversial these days. I'm concerned with what's happening on the corporate side of things. So right now there's a back and forth going between Paramount and Warner Brothers. David Ellison wants to merge the two. He's known to be extremely pro-Trump. It would seem that WB is still shopping around. Maybe Zaslav will sell WB to somebody else. Either way, corporate consolidation is bad. But whatever happens, it could alter the state of the DCU. A new boss above James Gunn could perhaps dictate the direction, perhaps even make the DC universe, become even more moderate, more milquetoast. Gunn might even be ousted from the company. It's hard to say where everything's going. I am a bit disappointed in how the season overall turned out. James Gunn humor isn't for everybody. Sometimes he's a little bit too self-indulgent. He relies a little bit too much on montages, particularly in this final episode of the season. But him being in charge of this new DC universe is probably still not good. He does like to play with a diverse cast of characters who are a found family. He's tackled topics of imperialism in Latin American countries with the Suicide Squad movie. He addresses the scapegoating of immigrants in Superman. Does confront fascism to an extent here in this show, Peacemaker. And when you look at what he said in interviews to the media, it does seem that he's conscious about what he's putting on screen, at least favorable to certain interpretations, even though he's media trained in a way that he is a bit indirect or subtextual about his meanings, and perhaps a bit sarcastic when he's asked questions like this in Rolling Stones. And this is referencing the final episode of Peacemaker Season 2, where Chris is kidnapped by a government agency to, be expelled to a prison world, pretty much. So, to be clear, you've made a key part of the DCU going forward about a government official abusing their power by having masked thugs come in the middle of the night and expel innocent people from the planet. Of course, it's a reference to ICE kidnapping and deporting innocent people, including citizens here in the US. His response, he grins, it's just totally fiction, Brian. This is like something that can never happen on our planet. But that's the beauty of things like comic books. You can explore things that would never ever happen on our world. Now that feels a bit sarcastic, doesn't it? He grins. Obviously this is what's happening right now. It's not really an exaggeration. And he even said something similar about Superman, when he was asked about the connections to the Middle East. And so he says, when I wrote this, the Middle East conflict wasn't happening, so I tried to do little things to move it away from that. But it doesn't have anything to do with the Middle East. It's an invasion by a much more powerful country run by a despot into a country that's problematic in terms of its political history, but has totally no defense against the other country. It really is fictional. Again, it reads like something he's saying this to kind of avoid and deflecting any intention to perhaps maybe appease a wider audience, which is a bit cowardly, maybe kind of like Auggie. But it could read as a way for him to get his point across without, getting in hot water with the top executives who are more concerned with establishing a more moderate tone for their intellectual properties, right? When it comes to politics. When he says invasion by a powerful country run by a despot, that pretty much sounds like Israel. And then they're problematic in terms of its political history. You could see that as a reference to, Hamas being characterized as terrorist, and then has no defense. In comparison to Israel, they have really no defense. They may have some rockets here and there. It pales in comparison to the Iron Dome, to all the military funding the US and other nations are giving Israel in order to continue the genocide and apartheid. So this can read as sarcasm as well, or as a subtle, or as subtext. It's an easy way to defend himself in case someone does accuse him of being, too radical or something, right? You can just say, oh no, this is just a comic book story. It's not really based on reality, wink, wink, To have someone like that in charge of the superheroes on the big screen right now, when it comes to DC heroes, that could probably be the best we can ask for at this moment in this current hellscape we live in, So looking at it that way, maybe we should be optimistic with James Gunn at the helm. If we want to see more progressive ideas reflected within our superhero stories. Another nice thing about this new direction the DCU is going in is that it is diversifying in terms of on the types of stories it's telling. We're getting these R-rated stories like Peacemaker. We're getting the PG-13, more family-friendly stuff on the big screen like Superman. There's going to be a horror film, a Clayface horror film coming up. We have a Supergirl movie coming out next year with Anna Nogueira writing that. And that's really where we'll see if this new DCU has some long legs, because we're eager to see new voices be introduced to get, their takes, their styles, to get more perspectives besides just James Gunn. But yeah, I feel like it is important to think about how depictions are handled of conservatism, of fascism, as we're moving forward, as fascism encroaches more and more every day in the real world. We want to see some of our entertainment reflect reality and kind of call out the evildoers on and off screen, you know? And if we're gonna do some satire, if we're gonna include these political themes, I think it's important to be mindful of how it's portrayed and how it's received. Because even a lot of liberals, whether in Hollywood or in media in general, appear to be challenging authoritarianism by not being critical enough, by falling back into political moderation and trying to appease Nazis who won't ever get on your side. You're actually enabling them. You're actually allowing it to fester. We saw this happen with the whitewashing of Charlie Kirk, after his death. A once progressive news site, the Young Turks, is platforming, white supremacists like Tucker Carlson. We gotta lean away from that. I think James Gunn has more potential than most to actually move in the right direction. So hopefully we can see that going forward. Overall, I think he's one of the good ones. I mean, this is probably one of the most wholesome orgy scenes I've seen on TV or anywhere, really. So, and you can even consider the final bit of Peacemaker to be a celebration of worker-owned businesses. Is Checkmate a cooperative? It would seem that it could be, right? So, what are your thoughts? How did you feel about season 2? Was it harsh enough on Nazis or not? Where do you see the DCU going in the future? What do you want to see in your superhero entertainment? Let's chat down below. That's gonna be it though for now. I'll see you next time under the moonlight. Bye bye.